Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The keys slipped from her fingers and skittered across the cracked asphalt, and she bent for them slow, the way old knees bend, and his boot came down on them first. 74 years old. Alone in a gas station lot at the edge of nowhere, the last light of the day gone purple behind the pines. Her car sat dead beside the air pump, hood up. The engine that had carried her to her husband's grave, and most of the way home now silent and cooling in the cold. The young man stood over her with her purse already in his hand. He had a face that had never once been told no. "Nobody is coming to save you," he said, and he smiled when he said it. Because he believed it, because for him it had always been true. What he didn't see, what he couldn't have seen, with the diner's neon buzzing in his eyes and the old woman's fear filling up the whole world, was the man at the far end of the lot who had stopped pumping gas. Or the phone already in that man's hand. Or 30 miles back down Highway 71. The sound that was already beginning to build. To understand how it ended, you have to go back about an hour, to the kind of evening that doesn't promise anything at all. The lantern sat alone off Highway 71, a 2-pump gas station with a diner bolted onto the side of it, the last lit-up thing for 11 miles in either direction outside Joplin, Missouri. The smell of it reached the lot before you ever saw the door. Burnt coffee. Fryer grease gone old, the cold mineral smell of rain that hadn't fallen yet. Moths hammered themselves against the buzzing sign. Inside, a radio played something low and country and decades out of date, and the only sounds over it were the hiss of the grill and the slow scrape of a mop nobody was hurrying with. The booths were mostly empty. A trucker hunched over a plate near the window. 2 college kids shared a basket of fries and a phone. The waitress, a tired woman named Donna, refilled cups out of habit more than need. This was the kind of place that used to be busy when the old road still carried everyone, before the interstate pulled the traffic 4 miles north and left the lantern to keep its lights on out of stubbornness alone. Cole Maddox sat in the corner booth with his back to the wall and his eyes on the door, because that was the only way he knew how to sit. He was 61 years old and built like something you'd brace a barn against, gray in his beard, gray in the long hair tied back off a face that had been broken and set more than once. The cut on his back was worn soft at the edges, the patches faded, the leather smelling of 2,000 miles of weather. When he had come through the door an hour earlier, the 2 college kids had gone quiet, and the trucker had found something fascinating in his coffee. People did that around him. He was used to it. He had been riding since dawn out of Amarillo, heading north and east for a memorial 3 states away, a brother gone last winter. A thing he hadn't found the words for yet, and maybe never would. All he wanted right now was 10 minutes off the road and a cup of coffee that hadn't been sitting on a burner since noon. He carried something he didn't talk about, the way men like him carry things. A mother who had died alone in a county home while he was somewhere on a highway not answering his phone, and a debt to her memory that no amount of road had ever paid down. Before we get to who was about to walk through that door, do me a favor, hit subscribe and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this one travels. Your town, your state, anywhere in the world. I read every single one. Now, back to that quiet diner off Highway 71. Because the woman whose evening was about to come apart had no idea yet that anything was wrong at all. Her name was Eleanor Hartwell, and she had been Eleanor Hartwell for 74 years, 51 of them married to a man named Walt, who had been gone now for 3. She had lived in the same White House in Carthage her whole adult life, raised 2 sons in it, buried her husband out of it, and she still set 2 cups at the counter every morning before she remembered. She was not a frail woman in her own mind. She wore her good wool coat to go out, the one with the elbows worn smooth, because Walt had always said a woman should look like she meant to be somewhere. She kept his pocket watch in her purse and wound it every morning at the kitchen table, and it kept perfect time, and that small, reliable ticking was one of the only things in her life that still answered her. That afternoon, she had driven the 40 minutes out to the cemetery, the way she did on the 12th of every month, sat on the cold bench by his stone, told him about the grandchildren and the leak in the gutter and the new minister she wasn't sure about. She had left a thermos of his coffee by the marker the way she always did, then poured it out and brought the thermos home, because that was the ritual, and the ritual was most of what she had left. The car had died on the way back, lights flickering, then gone, the old sedan coasting to the shoulder near the only lit building for miles. She had walked the last 100 yards in the cold, with her purse held against her chest, grateful there was a phone she could borrow. Grateful the place was open, grateful, the way people of her generation are grateful, that there was somewhere at all. She did not expect anyone to help her. She had stopped expecting that a long time ago. She only meant to call her son and wait. She was a woman who had become very good at waiting, and very good at not being a bother, and very good at being, in nearly every room she entered, completely invisible. That's why she didn't see the young man watching her from the lot. The cold came in first when the door opened, a draft that made the candles flicker on the empty tables, and then the noise of him. Trent Boyd was 26 and had the kind of swagger a man only keeps when he's never paid for anything he's done. He came in loud, snapping at Donna for cigarettes, and his eyes went around the room the way a certain kind of man reads a room. Not for who's there, but for what's weak. He clocked the trucker and skipped him. He clocked Cole in the corner and his eyes slid right past, because in Trent's experience, nothing old and gray had ever been a problem for him. And then he found Eleanor, hunched at the counter with her purse on her lap and her borrowed phone in her hand, and Cole watched something settle in the young man's face that he had seen 100 times before and hated every single time. Trent sat himself 2 stools down from her, too close, and let the silence do its work. Then he leaned over. "That your car out there? The dead one?" he asked. Eleanor said yes, that she'd called her son, that the tow would come. Trent smiled. He told her the tow wouldn't come out this far, not at this hour, that she'd be lucky to see anybody before morning. He told her it wasn't safe, a woman her age, out here all alone. He let the word alone sit there between them. He was smiling the whole time. Donna had gone still behind the counter. The trucker stared into his cup. Nobody moved, and Cole, in the corner, set down the menu he wasn't reading. It went further the way these things always go further when a room decides to look away. Trent told her, lower now, that he could give her a ride, that a nice lady like her shouldn't be sitting on a stranger's phone, that she could thank him for it. When she said no, politely, the way she'd been raised, eyes down, he reached over and took the phone right out of her trembling hand and set it down out of her reach, casual, like it was the most natural thing in the world. He asked her how much she had on her. She didn't answer. He asked again, and this time he put his hand on her purse strap. 3 people in that diner watched it happen. 3 people found somewhere else to look. The college kids stared at their fries. The trucker studied the rain that had started ticking against the glass. Donna's hand hovered over the phone behind the register and did not pick it up, because the last time she'd called the sheriff out here, it had taken 40 minutes and a lecture about wasting their time. Eleanor stood up to leave. That was her mistake, or it would have been, in any other diner, on any other night. Trent stood up with her and walked her backward toward the door and out into the cold, his hand never leaving the strap, talking the whole time in that easy, poisoned voice. And she went because she didn't know what else to do. An old woman in a good wool coat being herded across a wet parking lot by a man 4 decades younger and twice her size. The doors swung shut behind them. Inside, the radio kept playing. Nobody followed. But somebody had already left through the side door a minute before. Quiet. A cup of coffee abandoned and going cold on the corner table. And outside, in the dark at the far end of the lot, that somebody had made a phone call that lasted 9 seconds. Then the keys had fallen. Then the boot had come down. Then the young man had looked down at the woman crouched on the asphalt and said the thing he'd said 100 times to 100 people who'd had no one. Nobody is coming to save you. And for the first time in his life, he was wrong. Cole didn't shout. He never shouted. He set his phone in his pocket, and he crossed the lot the way weather crosses a plane. Slow. Certain, taking its time because it has all the time in the world. His boots were quiet on the wet asphalt. The neon turned the rain to streaks of red around him. Trent didn't hear him until he was close, and when he did turn, what he saw made his easy smile catch for just a second. A wall of a man, gray and unhurried, stopping 6 feet away with his hands loose at his sides. "Pick up her keys," Cole said. It wasn't loud. It wasn't a threat. It was a thing that simply needed to be done, said by a man who fully expected it to be done. Trent laughed, because laughing was the only thing he knew how to do when he was afraid. He started talking. He said a lot of words, fast ones, about how this was none of the old man's business, about how he should get back on his bike and ride before he got hurt, about how he had people, about how the old man had no idea who he was dealing with. He filled the silence with all of it, the way frightened men do. Cole let him finish. Then he looked down at Eleanor, still on the ground, and something in his face, for just a moment, in the red neon light, was not about Trent at all. It was about a county home, and a phone that rang, and a road he'd been on instead of where he should have been. "Ma'am," he said quietly. "You're all right now." Trent shoved him, or tried to. He put both hands on that broad chest and pushed, and Cole did not move, did not even shift his weight, and the not moving was somehow worse than any blow. Trent's face changed then. The bored cruelty drained out of it, and something underneath came up. The realization that the math of this evening had quietly stopped working in his favor. He stepped back. He pulled out his own phone with a hand that wasn't as steady as his voice. "You think you're tough?" he said, dialing. "You wait. You just wait. I got 6 guys 10 minutes out. You're gonna wish you stayed in your booth, old man." He got someone on the line. He told them where. He was loud about it, performing it, certain that backup was the same thing as winning. Cole let him make the call. He didn't interrupt it. He stood in the rain with the old woman behind him and let the young man summon everything he had. And when Trent hung up, breathing hard, grinning again now that help was coming, Cole bent down, slow, and picked Eleanor's keys up off the ground himself and pressed them into her trembling hand and helped her to her feet. Then he turned back to Trent, and he smiled. It was a small smile, almost gentle, the smile of a man who has heard a familiar sound from far away. "You're 6 guys," Cole said. "How fast can they get here?" Trent frowned. 10 minutes, less. Cole nodded slowly, like he was doing arithmetic. "That's a problem for you," he said. "Why's that?" Cole didn't answer. He tilted his head, the way a man does when he's listening to something the other person can't hear yet. And then Trent heard it too. Engines, far off at first, down the black ribbon of Highway 71, low and rolling, more felt in the chest than heard in the ear. The sound of many V-twins moving together in formation. A sound that climbed and thickened until the windows of the lantern began to tremble in their frames and the puddles in the lot shivered with it. Donna came to the diner door and pushed it open and stood there with the trucker crowding behind her, both of them staring north. The college kids pressed their faces to the glass. Eleanor lifted her head. Trent turned toward the highway, and the grin was already dying on his face. Because whatever he had been expecting from his phone call, it was not this. Headlights appeared at the bend. 2, then 10, then more than he could count. A river of white light pouring down the dark highway and turning, all of them turning, into the lot. They came in a tight, disciplined line, no chaos in it, no mob. Just chrome and leather and thunder rolling across the asphalt in a wide arc that filled the whole lot in under a minute. 30 motorcycles. They formed a half circle around the dead car and the old woman and the gray-bearded man, and then, one by one, the engines cut out, and the silence that came after was the loudest thing of all. 30 riders. Not one of them said a word. The rain ticked on the gas tanks. The neon buzzed. Trent Boyd stood frozen in the middle of all of it, his phone still in his hand, and his 6 guys were not coming, and even if they came, they would not matter. And you could see the moment the truth of that reached his face. The line opened, and one rider swung off his bike and walked toward Cole. He was older even than Cole, lean and weathered as a fence post, a long gray braid down his back, and a road captain's rocker on his cut. His name was Dutch, and he and Cole had ridden 10,000 miles of the same roads over 40 years. He didn't look at Trent. He never once looked at Trent. That was the thing Trent understood last and understood worst, that to these men, he simply did not exist. Dutch crossed the wet lot and stopped in front of his brother and gripped his shoulder. "Got your call," Dutch said. "We were closer than you thought." Then, Dutch's eyes went past Cole to the old woman standing behind him in her good wool coat, her purse clutched to her chest, her white hair come loose in the rain, and something in the road captain's hard face went soft and broke open all at once. He took his hat off. In front of his 30 brothers in the buzzing neon and the cold, the old man took his hat off to her, the way men did when he was young, the way nobody had done for Eleanor Hartwell in longer than she could remember. "Evening, ma'am," he said quietly. "Sorry to make such a racket. We'll have you home." That was the moment the tears came, not from fear anymore. Eleanor pressed her hand to her mouth and her shoulders shook, and she could not get a word out. And a woman rider near the front swung off her bike and came and put an arm around her and held her up. More of them dismounted now, the smell of wet leather and hot engines filling the lot. And they moved with quiet purpose. 2 of them already at the dead sedan with the hood up and a flashlight. Another on the phone with a real tow company that would, it turned out, absolutely come out this far when 30 Harleys asked. Trent tried to leave. He took one step toward the dark edge of the lot and found 3 riders standing in it, not touching him. Not speaking, just there. He took another direction and found the same. He was not trapped. Exactly. They left him a path. They always leave a path. But Dutch finally turned and looked at him then, the first and only time, and said just one thing. "We've got your plate, son." And we've got it all on his phone. He nodded at Cole. "Sheriff's already coming. You can wait, or you can run. Running's worse." Trent ran. He bolted across the lot and into the trees, and the dark swallowed him. And he did not deserve more of the story than that, and the story did not give it to him. The sheriff's deputy, who arrived 20 minutes later, took the video off Cole's phone and the statements from Donna and the trucker, who found their voices now that it was safe to have them, and learned that Trent Boyd was already wanted in 2 counties for the exact same thing done to 2 other women who'd had no one in the lot to stop it. He was picked up before dawn at his mother's house. Eleanor's car turned out to need only a battery cable, fixed in the lot by a man named Pretty Pete, who'd been a diesel mechanic before he'd been anything else, and it started on the first try, the old engine turning over warm and willing under the lights. She wanted to thank them. She kept trying. She got as far as Cole, who was already buckling his helmet, already turning back toward the road and the memorial 3 states north that he still had to reach. She took his big scarred hand in both of her small ones and started to say something about how she didn't know what she would have, how she thought nobody. And he stopped her, gentle, the way you'd stop a child. "Somebody's always coming, ma'am," Cole said. World just forgot. Then he climbed onto his Harley, and around him the 30 engines fired again one by one until the whole lot roared, and they pulled out onto Highway 71 in a long bright chain heading north. And the sound of them faded slow down the dark road until the lantern was quiet again and only the neon was left buzzing. Eleanor Hartwell drove herself home that night. She did not call her son to come get her. She got into her own car, started her own engine, and drove the dark roads back to the White House in Carthage by herself, sitting up straight in her good wool coat with Walt's pocket watch ticking in her purse on the seat beside her. And when she got there, she did not sit in the dark the way she had every night for 3 years. She turned on every light in the house. Then she picked up the phone and called her son, not to be rescued, just to talk, just to tell him she'd had quite a night, and the 2 of them stayed on the line until past midnight. Donna kept the cold cup of coffee Cole had left on the corner table. She didn't pour it out. She didn't really know why. She just left it there, on the table by the window, the whole rest of her shift, like a place still set for someone who might come back. Some people think the world runs on the kind of man who can stand over a frightened old woman and tell her nobody is coming. They're loud about it. They're sure of it. But every now and then, the road answers back, and it turns out the quietest man in the diner was on the phone before anyone looked away, and 30 engines were already turning north, and the only person in that whole cold lot who was truly alone was the one who'd been so certain he had all the power. If this one reached you, if you still believe somebody's supposed to come when a person has no one, hit that like and share it with someone who needs to remember it tonight. Subscribe so you never miss the next story. And do me one favor down in the comments, tell me where you're watching from. And tell me, would you have stood up out of that booth?